Zohran Mamdani is a very charismatic 33-year-old young man who has been an assemblyman for less than 4 years and is somebody who, from the business community standpoint, came out of nowhere. He latched on to the issue that is the biggest one in our city and in America, which is financial insecurity. 90% of the people in New York are not sure they can continue to afford to live here. We are the most expensive city in America, the third most expensive city in the world. So there's a disconnect between the winner of New York's Democratic primary for mayor and much of the business and real estate community.
Let's talk about some of the policies. As you mentioned, tax the rich, including both income tax and I think property tax as well.
And corporate taxes.
And corporate taxes as well. A lot of free things given for the less fortunate among us. What are the likelihood that he actually will be able to implement those as opposed to just talk about them?
Mamdani's position on all these issues is more government spending, which honestly has been the position of generally of Democratic candidates for a while. Right now we're facing a situation really in New York where our economy is stronger than ever. We're a $1 trillion economy, 4.8 million jobs. We're in good shape from an economic standpoint. Our tax revenues are very strong. But there is coming down the pike some reckoning. The federal government is cutting a number of the programs we depend on. Local tax base, even as strong as New York, cannot support large federal cuts.
What we're hearing right now is this is good for Greenwich, this is good for Florida, this is good for Texas. What is the real risk that some of the mobile rich will use their mobility?
We certainly are in a much more competitive situation in New York historically than we were in the past because, again, of our high-cost environment, not just the cost of living, but the cost of doing business here. There's a 20% premium at least on salaries for employees to maintain a lifestyle in New York as opposed to what they could achieve in Tennessee or Florida or wherever, even New Jersey. So we are in a competitive situation. We are at risk of losing business and jobs. We have our economy, fortunately, has been very innovative and has grown while we have outsourced jobs to other places. Jobs, administrative jobs in the financial industry, back office jobs, have been leaving New York for 40 years. But we've replaced them with high-paying technical and other jobs. The question now is, where's the breaking point? And certainly the high tax rate is a big contributor. And I have to mention, in 2018, we lost something that was a tremendous asset for New York, which was federal deductibility of state and local taxes, known as SALT deductibility. When we lost that, everybody, all the taxpayers that really support the city, their taxes went up substantially in 2018.
Do you think what's playing out in New York City actually gives some indication of where the Democratic Party may be heading? It's
very fragmented, and so I'm not sure about the role of parties in the future of our democracy. This election was organized and driven in large part by a relatively small group of the Democratic Socialists. It's a group that I kind of trace back their power to Occupy Wall Street of almost 20 years ago. And so I think we may be going through a similar kind of transformation where we're seeing communities step up and say our traditional organizations, political or otherwise, are not doing for us what we need done. We are feeling increasingly left out. Any of the benefits we expect and the opportunities we expect as Americans, we're priced out of the housing market. I mean, in New York, our median rents are about $4,000 a month. Who can afford that? The employers, if you ask them, what's the hardest thing about recruiting new talent to the city? They'll say it's the rents. They can't find an apartment. So these are the issues that have been zeroed in on, particularly by all the candidates. Honestly, these were the issues in our campaign. All the candidates But the most compelling solutions came from the socialists. And Mamdani claims, my door was knocked on in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is a purple neighborhood at best. Mamdani claims to have 50,000 volunteers. The Democratic Socialists organized this. So we're not talking about a situation where he was delivered this by the Democratic Party. Quite the opposite.
Whatever Mr. Mamdani's primary victory in New York City this week ends up meaning, this is not the first time that a large city has turned to progressive policies. Harvard economist Ed Glaeser has made a study of American cities over the years, and he's found structural factors that bring such policies to the fore.
I think about the sort of, the great challenge of cities is that there's a bent-in natural progressive element in cities, mostly because cities tend to attract a significant number of relatively poor people. And that's not because cities are bad for poor people. It's actually because cities are typically good for poor people, because you have better social services, because you have the ability to get around without a car for every adult. And so you have this built-in kind of progressive thing. And yet, if cities veer too much towards this sort of progressive urge, they risk inducing the firms to leave. They risk inducing the businesses to go somewhere else, to relocate, to suburbanize, to leave to a lower cost country. And of course, they induce the wealthy to want to leave as well. Because the fundamental essence of a city is geographic mobility, is the fact that this is a smaller geographic unit. It's not like the United States, where people are relatively fixed.
Has socialism ever worked? We have a candidate, Mr. Mamdani, who says he's a democratic socialist. Has socialism ever worked in any city?
I kind of think sewer socialism was pretty successful. So the key mayor is Daniel Webster Hone, who was mayor, 24-year mayor of Milwaukee, just absolutely amazing. He's one of the prime examples of what's called sewer socialism, which was incredibly pragmatic socialism, right? So this is very far away from the sort of, European coffee house kind of socialism, but it's a socialism that's determined to figure out how to provide ordinary services for poor people. He was mayor for 24 years, and he was really one of the great mayors. He was checked in perhaps his most destructive impulses by the city council, and so there were things that he wanted to do in terms of turning an electric company into a public company and so forth, that he was stopped. But by and large, he was focused on the basics of city government. I think this makes a larger point, right? It's not that a mayor needs to put the interests of the rich first, but the mayor has to balance two things. But it requires a level of progressivism that's just vastly more pragmatic and vastly more focused on the nuts and bolts of government than I think most of what we see around us today.
What you identify is exactly what's being discussed in New York City right now. We have Mr. Mamdani, who is putting forward proposals for the less fortunate, things like free transportation and freezing rent and taxing the wealthy much, much more. And on the other side, you say, boy, the wealthy are mobile, and they will become mobile if you do that. Does history prove that out? Will you lose the wealthy?
The wealthy certainly are mobile. There's a healthy economics debate about how elastic the mobile are and how quickly they move out. But certainly people respond to incentives. And it seems to me that this is a maximally risky moment for New York City to be trying an experiment of hyper-taxing the hyper-rich.
From your experience, having studied cities in the United States over years, how much difference can a mayor make in the economic fortunes of a city?
Well, it's very hard to turn around a city that is suffering from enormous headwinds. And there are some times when a city is thriving so well that even the worst mayor can do little harm. But if a city is on the edge, it really matters. And I think New York City right now is not a city in which success is foreordained, and it's a city in which failure can be avoided. So I think in this case, it really does matter.